like we got ourselves a batch of shinies, Commander.
Welcome to episode 27 of Coordinated Fire, a Star Wars Shatterpoint podcast, where the weather in Canada is starting to get cold enough that we might just plug our nose and jump into that tauntaun after all. Kyle, how you doing this evening?
I'm doing great. I will make a note from all of us at Coordinated Fire that we do not support tauntaun cruelty, but absolutely great. And those on video, though, are obviously seeing that it is not just Sean and myself here. Unfortunately, Titus was not able to join us, but we've got some guests here.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. We have two fantastic
dubious replacements.
Dubious
indeed.
Takes two of
so
us.
We are super happy to be joined by William Rutan and Michael Plummer from Atomic Mass Games. Really great for you guys to be on the podcast here with us. So just to start off, our podcast hits some newer players and people that are just maybe joining the game. For those of you that don't know what you do, could you just give us a quick rundown of who you are and what you do, starting with you there, Plummer?
Yeah, I am the game development manager at Atomic Mass Games. So it is my job to help kind of guide the team that makes all of our games through the process of taking the designs that come down from our design team to fruition, to making them a product, to taking them through playtest, internal, external, kind of turning everything on its head and making iterations and making the things that eventually get brought out into the world for you all to play and enjoy.
I'm a game developer at Atomic Mass Games. I do a lot of work on Shatterpoint and mostly make Plummer very frustrated with me.
That's not true.
Fantastic. Are you breaking things most of the time?
Sometimes.
Yeah. Some pieces need to be picked up. Amazing.
That's usually the job, though. You know, you break it. I get annoyed that it's broken, but I'm glad you broke it, and then we fix it.
Fantastic. Awesome. Yeah. So we are kind of freshly off of Ministrav here. That's why we're having you on to discuss that, deep diving into some of the new formats and the ways to play the game as well too. So just to kind of start us off here with just a quick icebreaker question, kicking off with Inferno Squad and following up with Delta Squad this year, we've seen some incredible characters from our favorite video games in the Star Wars universe come to life in Shatterpoint. Starting with you, Rutan, what are your favorite Star Wars games?
I think it's not canon now, but I'm an old Republic fan. Played a bunch of that back in the day, and it's still got a soft spot in my heart.
I'm right there with you, bud.
Good BioWare magic at the time. It was quite fantastic.
Amazing. Plummer, what about you?
Man, I think for me, I would have to call back to old like Star Wars Dark Forces 2 Jedi Knight.
All right.
That was
All
like
right.
and like the old flight sims like X-Wing and TIE Fighter. I played a lot of those when I was a kid. Those were kind of cut my teeth on. Now I think about, like, oh, there's also the Super Nintendo Star Wars game. I played that one a lot too. So I guess I played a lot of them.
Amazing.
I like all these cuts.
I was gonna say Empire Strikes Back on the Super Nintendo.
That
is a gem.
It's a gem and a half, I would say.
X-Wing TIE Fighter for me too, and I know Knights of the Old Republic 2 gets the most hype, but I think the original first one actually kind of hits maybe a little bit more for me, because like when that one came out, it was something.
I think when you get the twist for the first time,
yes, I think yes, yeah, that is what it is. Yeah,
that can't be a spoiler alert at this point.
Oh no, God, no.
Oh, there's somebody who's upset that you spoiled a 25-year-old game.
Amazing.
You mean the hobbits through the ring in the mountain?
They what? Awesome. So jumping to the next one. So you both live kind of in an interesting state for playing the game yourselves, right? The world between worlds of Shatterpoint, both playing the same game that we're all playing today for balance and for fun, I imagine, but also playing the game that we will be playing in, 18 months to 2 years. Is it ever hard for you guys to go back and forth between those things with both past versions of a character, current versions, and future versions?
Go ahead, Rutan.
Update 2025 was tough, because I would be like, all right, what does this character do again? And then, like, you got to be careful, right? Because I can't be like, oh, I'm going to buy some dice with Mace. You can't buy dice with Mace. right? Like that
You
moment.
sure can't, of course.
Of course, no, you're totally right. I misread the rule. Right?
Yeah,
It's like
when
you go to
we're-
the library and you dust off the old books. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah.
when we're working on a balance update, it's a very special kind of torture because we're trying to keep straight the new thing that we're trying to make the unit do, and then you're playing a game with your friends that aren't playtesters, and you're like, oh yeah, this does this thing, and he doesn't do that. And you're like, oh yeah, you used to do that way back, because
I
there
said
is also
nothing.
there is also very much the like version fatigue is so real. Sometimes like I'll be talking to Rutan and we'll be working on making something and I'll be like, so and such and such a character does this. He's like, no, they don't. I'm like, they sure do. And then when we look back and like, sure enough, they don't do that, but they did do it at
They
some
did
point
3
in
versions
playtest.
ago.
They did, yeah,
Oh,
exactly. They
yes.
did it like 3 versions prior to when they locked, and I just haven't thought about them in a minute because I've been thinking about other stuff. Like it happens all the time. And it's really, really difficult to like there's also just this like liminal space between like what we have finished and turned in and like is ready to go to print, etc., and what we have told y'all about and what has been printed and like has actually come out, and like there are different gaps in all those things, so sometimes you have to like go check the schedule before you hang out with your friends.
Well, I imagine once it's locked in, you guys are moving on to the next thing and not actually spending much time with that final version.
Like not in testing at work. I mean,
Yeah.
like we do and we don't, right? Because like as we're testing new stuff, you need to test it against locked stuff. So like I still play core set characters all the time because we want to play test like whatever new thing we're making. Like one of the natural places that we start play testing stuff from is against the core set. Like if we're gonna make a whole new set of units, like what better to test against than the core set, which is like the first place that people are going to start playing from and should be the foundation of the game. So like those units, we kind of never forget what they do. And then once we change them, we kind of relearn it and move forward from there. But then even beyond that, like when we were making Baylan Skoll, you have to test that with Obi-Wan Kenobi. Like you have to. There's no way that you can make those 2 characters and not test them. You could, but that would be a huge mistake. So but we still get to live with and enjoy the stuff that exists, but it's in a different way. And sometimes it's easier to just like avoid the conversation
Yeah.
than to mess it up.
Why,
It's just not
why do
worth
you
it.
only play stuff from the first year of the game? I don't know. Like, I know all the rules, right? Like,
I just really like Anakin Skywalker.
I mean,
Well, who doesn't?
I really
Who doesn't?
do like Anakin Skywalker. You're not wrong.
Especially since May, for no particular reason.
Yeah. And it's kind of since we're getting into some particular characters to kind of follow up on that, what are some primary pairings and lists that you've each been enjoying recently?
My favorite pairing, although it's not like the most optimal, is Padme and the guy she told you not to worry about, Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Padme. Okay.
Ooh, I
All right,
like
Kyle just perked up.
Obi-Wan are two
We
of my
have a
favorites.
Padme lover above me here.
Well, and Obi. Let's be
Well,
real.
yeah, and over, yes. Yeah, man
Like-
crush on Obi.
I like to play Hera Syndulla with anyone. Lately, it's been Hera and Jyn Erso or Hera and Leia Charmander the last.
Amazing. Interestingly, this coming Sunday, we're kind of doing an end of the year event within our local community, and we did a primary draft. And one of the guys playing, Josh, who's one of our local guys, actually has Jyn and Hera as
Yeah,
one
which
of
he
his
drafted,
primary
yeah.
pairings.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah,
I really like both of them a lot. Hera is just one of my favorites to play. I really like what she does on the table.
I don't
That
see
makes-
enough Hera outside of Kanan, so I like the energy. Awesome. Well, obviously, we're going to talk quite a bit about things that happened at Ministravaganza, but before we get there, I just kind of want to do a quick recap as we come close to the end of 2025. We saw early in the year, we got Kiadi Mundi, Kit Fisto, breathe some fresh air into your Republic Jedi lists. Rebel and Empire both getting some Rogue One support with some incredible boxes. We got Delta, Rift Tamsin. I can say from a player perspective, even as Shatterpoint matures with a deeper pool of units, every additional squad pack we get has me opening up the list builders, putting together this, which is super exciting from a player perspective. But from a development perspective, I imagine that creates some new challenges for you guys in trying to figure out how does this interact with everything we have existing so far. So what kind of challenges does that present? How does that change the design process for you guys?
It is definitely challenging. One of the big things about making miniatures games, about making the types of games that we get to work on, is that they're constantly ever growing. Usually, when you're playing a board game, the board game is very contained. It's like, this is what the game is. And even if you buy an expansion to the board game, it's very contained in what it adds. It adds these few things that have been very well thought out to make sure that they work with the original game. And in a lot of cases, the original game was planned with that in mind. And like, that's the whole package, is the game and the expansion, and that's it. And it's a lot to do. But games like Shatterpoint, it is not just that. It is like, here's the base game, this is how you play it, and then like, here's a bunch of pieces, and here's some more, and here are some more units, and here are some more units, and you can play them all together, and this is really a lot. So you kind of have to, early on especially, you really need to focus on like, very specifically, each piece, what does it do? Make sure that nothing gets out of control, nothing is too wild, because there's very few things that can go together. But as you kind of get a little further in, and as you get a little more comfortable in the space, you learn like what the tolerances are. There are a lot of really, I think, ingenious things in Shatterpoint that make it a little bit easier to balance in other games, particularly expertise charts and the way that the combat trees work. Like there's a cap on what a unit does, no matter what.
Right.
Like, this unit is never going to do more than 8 damage and a strain. This unit is never going to do more than 2 shoves and 7 damage in this thing. Right? Like, you could roll 300 dice, and at the point that you're rolling 300 dice, like, you are going to do 7 damage and a strain and a push or whatever, but it will never get worse than that. And we know that hard limit is on there, and no matter how hard something gets pushed or how hard you try and optimize, it doesn't get more optimal than this right here. And that's not entirely true, because maybe an ability is going to like add another damage or add another condition or whatever, but at base level, we have built in guardrails for ourselves, which is great.
Right.
Which allows us to be really free in our design of how we make the characters and make sure that they really fit Rutan always says, like, fits the fantasy of what the character is, like, what, and it's a really apt way to put it. Like, what is the power fantasy when you're playing this character? Because it's very different when you're playing Cad Bane versus when you're playing Ahsoka, and we go very theme forward and make sure that we hit that first. I'm sure Rutan has plenty to say.
Yeah, so there's a lot of it. It's challenging but advantageous. So the tag system in Shatterpoint really allows us to do a lot of things, right? It allows us to group big segments of miniatures together, your Galactic Empire, your Separatist Alliance. Yep. But then we can do sneaky stuff to like give a different line, like Kit Fisto's a fish. He's aquatic. Nasri cares about aquatic miniatures, right? So those two things may not be a normal pairing, not a natural pairing, but like maybe you're the guy who likes to play guys that swim and you play your aquatic force. And it can be a big challenge. It's a yin and yang. The big challenge is the more things that you put out, the more likely like you might miss something, and that can be a big challenge, although we do a lot of play testing to make sure that isn't the case. But the flip side is you get a lot of advantages where you can like have a little cheeky, like something cool that isn't quite on the surface, right? Where you can combine miniatures in a unique way to get an outcome that is unexpected.
And there's also this thing that Schick talks about a lot if you ever get the chance to chat with him, that balance is not supposed to be perfect. Balance should be a curve. And so like when we talk about this question about what are all the challenges of maintaining the balance of the game, like I think it would be extra challenging if we had to maintain a perfect balance. But the truth is that we don't, and we have this understanding that there will be a best thing, there will be a worst thing.
Right.
If we're making 15 things, we know that these are going to be the best 5, these are going to be the worst 5, and these are going to be the middle 5. And the best thing that we can do for the game and for everything that we're doing, because you can't make it all the best, is we can make sure that the difference between the best and the worst is not too huge, and that the things that are the best are kind of comparable to one another. The things that are in the middle are kind of comparable to one another, and especially that the ones in the middle really need to be interesting, and so do the ones that are the worst, because the ones that are the worst should really be the worst by like the smallest margin.
Yes.
Yeah, where you're like, well, that does 3 damage and this does 2 damage, and someone could be like, yeah, but that looks cool, so I'm playing that one. And it doesn't mean they're not going to win the game, but like if you're looking for like most effective tactics available, like you're looking for the meta choice, you're not going to pick that one because you know how to do math. But at the end of the day, like if you make them all the same, there's no reason for them all to exist. So they have to have their differences, and hopefully the thing that is like the worst is the best somewhere else. that is maybe not valued as much by the people that play the game in the current meta. But if you're a creative player, or if you like to do a certain tactic, maybe they have a lot of access to jumps and you really like that, but they don't do much damage. So if the meta is to do damage, this character that jumps doesn't matter. But if you really want to have a piece that's mobile, it doesn't matter how much damage this character does. If it can't jump, it's not the one. Then you reach for the character that jumps. That may be the worst character in the game, but it's the best character for your list. So we want to make sure that they do something interesting if they're not necessarily like a windmill slam pick because they do damage, or they move other miniatures, or they do these things that we know are solid and good. There are other things that we can make characters do that give them value, and that's what we try and do.
And I love that perspective, Plummer, because I am a big fan personally of primaries, and I am primarily an Empire player. If you listen to our episodes, Thrawn, Krennic, right? I love primaries like those, particularly Thrawn 2, that gives you the ability to do things that are not the consensus maybe best at the time, but gives you the ability to have different strategies and play styles. And they bring something new and different. So that's why, in particular, like I said, I love the game design within primaries like Thrawn and Krennic.
Have you gotten anybody with his stance flip to take an objective to win a struggle? I'm going to step on this and I'm going to take it. I have 5 people here. Oh no, you don't.
A number, yeah, because and
He's done it to
elevation
me.
and elevation doesn't matter. He's on the bottom. Boom. Thank you very much. That's a struggle win. Yes, absolutely.
It's a struggle win. Well, I'll take it right back. That's fine.
The struggle's over.
Struggles, yeah. Or the one that gets people too. Sorry, there is is if it ends up as a tie, you still got to bring somebody over here to take it from him. Right. So those types of, like, when you get the wheels turning with those types of strategies is something, again, I love it.
And the hope is that, like, that is fun enough for a player like you that you don't mind that you may not win every game because you have enough fun doing the thing. That's another piece of, like, what we're looking at, because we're not designing for a competitive meta. We're not developing this game to be played in tournaments. We're not developing this game to be like, this is the tier list. These are the ST characters. These are the A tier characters. Like, I don't think I've ever had a conversation with anyone at work about, like, what's the S tier primary character. I have no idea. But we do talk a lot about, like, what does this character do? Is that cool? Is that fun? That's the hope.
Yeah. And again, that was the perspective of when we first started this podcast, was that we don't want to primarily hone in on the competitive and the meta, right? And we want to be able to teach people, well, you like this primary? Well, here's 2 or 3 different things you could do with this primary, and how to do, like, as Kyle says, do the thing, right? And so when we do our primary breakdowns, like we just recently did one with Veers, right? I mean, we all know where Veers is at right now, but still there are people out there who love Veers. Titus has had a bromance with Veers for quite some time, but we want to be able to, again, with that philosophy, even within our own podcast, to be able to tell people, hey, you like this primary, we're going to help you how to, again, do the thing.
No matter where the ebb and flow goes, I will be playing Kenobi. Thank you very much.
There you go.
There we go.
And I just we're going to move into May update, but I wanted to just backtrack just to touch on something when you talked about guardrails. With the update, in terms of the core box, how do you, with the May update, which we'll transition into, ensure that the contents within the core box still have those guardrails when you make changes?
Go ahead. Yeah, please, Rutan.
So the thing about the core box is the core boxes are like bread and butter item, right? Like, we want players to feel like they get value from the core box, and we want every player to buy a core box, right? It's where you get your tokens, your widgets. It comes with beautiful terrain, right? And so we actually spend a lot of time thinking about, like, keeping tabs on, is the stuff in the core box cool? Do people like to play it? And that was why a big chunk of it was in the 2025 update, right? Is we were like, well, these things are still pretty good, but they're not the same level, right? Like, things have changed, the game's developed around them. And so we want to keep them fresh and exciting because we want everybody to feel like the core box was the best purchase they made for the whole game to get into the hobby. And then they get into whatever specific style or characters that they really like from the Star Wars universe.
Amazing.
Yeah, the core box is meant to be like the launching off point. It's supposed to be what I call a forever friend. Like, you should be reaching back to that core box, like, every once in a while, just to play a game with it, because it's fun. Hopefully every time, if you have anyone that's ever been interested in the game, like, hopefully you can throw them those characters, and they should be simple to play, but not necessarily like simple, but not hard, right? Like, they should kind of point you in the direction of what they're supposed to do through what their abilities say, and not require, like, too much planning or any strange interactions to do something. And really just provide a solid value, and that is the hope. And as we were getting towards 2 years into the game, looking at those units, like, sure, the Mandalorian units they were pretty prevalent. You'd see them in places, but our first clones were definitely something that people were not looking at when they were going to build their lists. People were definitely not reaching for Asajj Ventress to build their lists, or even, Ahsoka Tano. There was still quite a bit of Maul. And there were people playing Anakin, but I think some of them were asking themselves why they were doing it. And they were like, I really like this character, but Mace Windu kind of does the same thing. But he doesn't feel as bad doing it because he moves a little faster, or whatever their opinions were at the time.
Are you guys good now?
Yeah, so we like, we want those things to always feel like there's something that you can reach for and play a game and have a good chance. And as we continue to develop the game, as the game grows, we get a little more brave in what we're doing, and we realize what's fun and what's exciting about the game, and we're going to push the envelope, because you always need to push the envelope to keep things exciting and make something new and fresh. But what that means is that the older stuff it's going to limp a little bit, and it's going to show its age. Having the opportunity to go back and kind of give it a fresh coat of paint was really exciting.
I think, and I think this is true for all those core box primaries. Anakin and Maul specifically stand out for me as, like, there's a high floor here for that entry level, but there's also a high ceiling if you want to commit to these characters and get more out of them through the rest of the game. And as you add more boxes, more units, you can really open up what they do. And I think to that point, it's a perfect space to hit for a core box.
Yeah. Yeah, and then with the update, with full perspective of the update being out in the wild and in players' hands, are there any units stand out to you that you've enjoyed or that you're particularly proud of?
I'm really excited about seeing the Inquisitors more after the update. I think that they're a particular set of characters that were not quite where they needed to be. Particularly, like, I think Fourth Sister really came out great from the changes. So I think personally, like, I've been really excited to see people play the Inquisitors again, put a smile on their face and be like, oh, this is fun, this is cool, this works great with the rest of my Galactic Empire stuff. I think that was a place where we really hit the nail on the head.
Happy Empire player here, definitely.
For me, it's my boy Cody. I love Cody.
Nice.
I liked him before the update, and after we got to smooth out his kit and make him a little more streamlined and a little more straightforward, that guy smokes. Reroll them dice.
Any character that has the hunker symbol on their ability card, I am all in. Let's go.
Kyle is the hunker king between the three of us.
Okay, good to
the
know.
Cover action is the best action in the game.
Yes.
Full stop.
Ask Kyle how many games he's played at GTs that have a big old 0 with wounds. That's how Kyle likes to play the game.
That's great. Good.
Yeah.
I love to hear that.
It's fun. Kind of on that same note, is there anything that has surprised you since the update? Things you maybe not didn't play test or didn't expect to be played together post update, players came out with it and you're like, oh, that's really cool.
And we tested this stuff a lot, so I
believe that.
We were really thorough with this particular update. So there is nothing that came out of this that I'm like, I didn't see that coming with these changes that we made.
Let me guide you a little bit here. What was your, because you obviously you guys read stuff online, you kind of see what players are saying. The Anakin talk right off the hop.
Oh, sure.
Well, and even I got it. I even got into the, oh my gosh, Anakin.
I had to talk Sean off a cliff.
I did.
God.
What did they do? This guy is going to ruin the game. There was a period for maybe about a month, actually longer than that, 2 or 3 months, where the competitive players were just going like, this guy is the bee's knees. They went six to midnight, but dude, this guy's the best thing in the game. And yes, Kyle had to take me off a cliff. Was that the reaction that you expected from Anakin?
Yes. I kind of had a feeling.
I didn't. So fundamentally, we did some stuff with Anakin to flatten out his experience, right? The tiered identity was a big thing about that. So I was pretty confident he was going to be better, but I wasn't expecting people to be like, he's the best thing in the game. And I'm like, he wounds people. He's always wounded people, right? That's not new. But apparently just having his rewarding mechanic work all the time got people really excited.
Yeah, I think the addition of the kind of tiered, the tiered reward from the identity was really exciting, and people he was just going to feel better to play from what we did there. no matter what, because as long as Anakin was doing something, you were going to get some bacon. I always talk about the bacon button, and we made that button real easy to press. But we also knew that like we were going to let Anakin move other characters, which is something that Anakin couldn't really do before. I knew that that was opening a big can of worms because like in testing early on, our testers were like, let Anakin move someone. If Anakin moves someone else, that's great. And we did, and it like cracked things open. It was terrifying because he could just do it on a whim. And it was no big deal. So we had to let him earn it. And then when we let him earn it, we were able to like push it a little bit and be like, what if he moved everybody? And we did it. And it felt so bombastic and so Anakin that we were just like, that's it. Like, that's super rad. It's super good. And it's not that hard to pull off. So that feels great, but it also makes it terrifying. The difference is that there's this point in games when something new comes out and something new or something good or something like gets made good or whatever, where no one has any idea how to play against it because it's brand new. It's like it's the new lightning bolt that you're like, oh, what do I do against that? And of course it becomes the rage of like, how do I beat this? This is unstoppable. It's the best thing. And then someone figures it out. They find a way to circumvent it, to play against it. And you get that whole like period of time where everyone is innovating and trying new lists and doing this and doing that. And it's a very exciting time. It can be incredibly frustrating.
Yes.
But then once you find out how to play against it, the meta has to shift in and of itself, and that's also exciting.
Yeah, and we Kyle and I both listened to the two gentlemen from Germany that you were on the podcast with, and Schick actually went through a very interesting in the MCP section of that podcast where, and maybe what you're going to hear, Plummer, is that you have the super high end players who figure it out right away, but then things kind of just taper down. That's what happened with Anakin. Really, is that your super high comp guys went like straight to the moon with it, and then it did just as people figured it did much mellow out, and now, as Kyle will tell you, he's our numbers guy. Anakin's he's come down at the top level. He's doing good, but like that top peak.
So like the thing with Anakin that I think was why a lot of people were like, oh, he needs something very specific to happen to hit his full power level. He needs to wound a primary. And when you don't know anything about like what's going on, you're going to let your primary get wounded because you're not going to be like, I cannot allow Anakin to wound my primary. And then once you're like, oh, I played against Anakin, I can't allow him to wound my primary. I'm going to move 2 inches to the left,
Primaries
or I'm
go
not
over
going to go to
here.
this thing, or I'm going to push Anakin with a force power, not because I'm going to get him off a point, but I'm going to get him out of range of my primary. And then suddenly Anakin doesn't wound a primary. And then he uses his ranged attack instead because you got him out of position. And then all of a sudden he doesn't get to make the big play. He doesn't get that big Anakin Skywalker moment. And then he's very manageable, right? And that was like a part of the design philosophy for Anakin. When Anakin wins, he wins really big. But when he loses, it's like he just can't get there, right? And the key to the game matchup with Anakin is if your opponent gets to do what Anakin wants to do, you're going to lose. Stop them, right? And the Anakin player is focusing on trying to do the thing, and the person's trying to focus on not doing the thing. And it brings really interesting gameplay once we get past the like, I don't know what's going on here. Why did my board blow up?
Yeah,
right.
that initial shock value. Yeah.
I think we could talk about Anakin all day, but I think what it really boils down to is like there's a difference between I bring Anakin as a terrifying combat piece, and then I feel like your opponent has two decisions. They can be afraid of your terrifying combat piece, or they can respect your board control piece. And how you decide to react to Anakin being on the board is going to be dependent on what you brought and what your plan is. But like those are the two options. And once you realize that those are both options, you can change the way you play.
Awesome. All right. We will 180 this from a very hyped character to are there any units post rebalance that you guys think that the community is still sleeping on?
Asajj Ventress. I will always think that people sleep on I will always think that people sleep on Asajj Ventress because she is not super bombastic, but she is very consistent, and I really value consistency because I make stupid decisions. So when I make a bad decision about where I'm going to go and what I'm going to do, at least like rolling the dice, that piece of it of like what is the random chance part going to happen out, I can usually rely on what Asajj is going to have output-wise and that she can get out of the bad situation that I full well put her into. So I think that she's just, for me, I think she's a really like agile, elastic character that could be played.
So making a transition, the May update was huge and has added just a ton to play with in the game, but there's more stuff coming, which is always exciting. So jumping into Ministravaganza, obviously generated quite a lot of excitement. For a bunch of different stuff, what were you most excited to finally get out into the community?
Legendary encounters for me, 100%.
Sweet.
100%. We've been working on that for quite some time, right? We did the open beta test. We play tested it at Adepticon, and it is just a hoot. And I'm really glad that people have the experience to play it.
For me, it was probably getting to show off the Baylan Skoll card. I know that there's this other character in the game that uses hunker tokens a lot that some players really enjoy playing, and so getting to show
I don't
another
know who
hunker
those people
centric.
are.
Yeah, getting to show another hunker-centric character was really cool. No, that was for you. But yeah, Baylan is just really neat, and I had so much fun playtesting him. The design that came down, and then the work that we did to make it something that we could release was very difficult and very fun. And we had a really good time getting there, and I can't wait to see people playing him.
Amazing. No, that is, I have not been this excited for a character, I would say, since Delta Squad, which is the last release, so that's not saying much. But you hit a couple back to back that I'm very excited about. I wanted to, touch on legendary encounters next. I actually had a chance to play one last night at our local play night. Did Asajj on Make an Entrance.
Yeah.
The other guys that we're playing with, so was a kind of a bad back squad with commandos and then core box mandos for the other player, and we all had a ton of fun, and I say fun in just the nicest way I possibly can, in a way that just is so different from that competitive aspect, because obviously, like, I play in that area too, but I am a sucker for narrative style gameplay, and it was a ton of fun. So a couple directed questions after getting some time to kind of play with it. We take these characters and throughout Star Wars media, we see some extraordinary feats from a bunch of different characters, right? We see their movie moments, and there's very clear intent in Shatterpoint that units feel like their characters. And I think you guys do an incredible job at that. But in, the standard balanced game, there obviously has to be some restraint when it comes to how much these can do. You can't have Vader, blowing through the entire enemy team in a couple seconds. But legendary encounters allow you to play in that area a bit. So, you get to take the training wheels off of our main characters and let them live their big moments. So how does design change from, a standard primary unit to becoming a galactic legend?
I think the most exciting thing about making the galactic legends themselves, like, just to even take a step back from your question here about, like, where does the design change for the character themselves, was when we worked through how the order deck for them was going to work. Because the big thing was, with galactic legends, we knew that it was all about fighting this main character. Like, who is this big bad that you were trying to stop, or maybe big good, who knows? They're the protagonist of this story from their side of the story, whatever. They're on their mission and you need to stop them. And, eventually we decided to give them minions, so they have a couple people with them, because it's, only having one miniature on the board felt pretty limiting and such. But the order deck needed to be different, because we didn't want you to just activate one miniature as the Galactic Legend. We wanted to be able to do everything, but we wanted to make sure there was still an order deck. So coming up with the idea that we kind of came up with these three archetypes for cards. Like, there's an aggression card, there's a defensive card, there's a movement card. And, like, every character has those in some measure, and some of them have more than one of one or don't have the other. But, like, that's the core idea, is there are types of cards and you're going to draw them. And of course, if you have multiples of the same one, you can play two of them, and then you get a bonus, you get better powers. These cards kind of dictate, like, how the game plays and what your character is going to be doing from time to time. With that idea in hand, we knew that we wanted our characters to basically be the character from the base game, like the same idea, but, like, turned up to 11 and changed some things, obviously, for the fact that, like, you only have 3 miniatures on the table, and these characters need to be able to, like, literally get wherever they want to, because otherwise they're just going to get pinned on this side of the table and never get to the enemy. So, we have some, I guess, rules about, like, how much mobility things need to have, how much condition removal, or like, when we break that rule, we need to be very cognizant of it to make sure that there are enough tools in the kit of Minion plus a Galactic Legend to be terrifying. Because part of the design, since you've played it, is that, like, the Galactic Legend is trying to wound enemy units, and then the other side kind of has the scenario to play. So the Galactic Legend needs to be able to stand in the way of the scenario, but doesn't need to be able to meet specific scenario goals. They just need to be able to go murder the enemy team. So that's a place that we get to play in. And Rutan did a lot of the work on the Anakin Skywalker one, which is exceptionally good at doing that. So he can probably chat about those needs.
The thing about Galactic or the Legendary Encounters is that we get to take the coolest moments of the characters and replicate them. So like Anakin's big thing is he gets tempted by the dark side. And so I watched a bunch of footage of Anakin. I watched the things where like the super cut when the Empire theme plays of Anakin in the Clone Wars, and I'm all looking and I was like, oh, this is cool. And then you get something that you don't have to, because one person only has to manage a single character plus their minions. We get to have way more complex rules, right? Because all they have to do is read one card or two cards, and we can keep the minions pretty simple. So this gave us tons of room with stuff that would be very hard to do regular Shatterpoint, like flip a card over and have a different rule set on its back, right? Like that'd be a lot for somebody. Like if you were in a tournament playing regular Shatterpoint and opponent hands you a double-sided card that has filled with text on both sides, you'd be like, oh God, right?
But I got one guy.
But you got one guy, right?
Yeah.
And honestly, if you're the cadre player, you don't need to know the particular details of what the character's doing, because you know what they're doing. They're going to punch you in the face. So like it helps to know the how, but like the timing windows and stuff aren't that as important in this type of thing, right? And so it really allowed us to do stuff that is just wild. Mass force choke is just wild.
So that was the one I was going to bring up, because I got to do that pretty early in the game where like things were still bunched together in deployment, and Asajj just ran up, mass force choke, and it was just this like everybody kind of laughing and moment, and like it was really cool, and I think kind of nails what this kind of mode is for, right?
When we tested it at Adepticon, a guy force choked somebody's entire cadre force and did 24 points of damage. And we were like, holy cow. And then Asajj lost. The guy was just on point about the scenario, took the huge wounding hit, but stayed strong and managed to pull through in uninvited guests. And that was just like exactly what we wanted, because everybody left that game stoked. The guy Asajj, even though they lost, they were like, oh my God, did you see that force choke? And his opponent was like, oh my God, I thought I was going to lose so hard. I got so lucky, right? Like, and everybody's really happy and upbeat about it. It was really great.
And that's the biggest thing. We want it to be fun, and hopefully you have a really great time playing the Galactic Legend, and hopefully you have a fun time trying to avoid the Galactic Legend.
Yeah, I think it's a perfect thing, because like, we have a group of 8 people that are pretty regularly out for our Thursday nights, local store kind of thing. But a lot of the time that's some pre-planning on, okay, how many people coming out, who are we pairing with who? And we've had times where there's an odd number and someone just doesn't have an opponent. And I think this is just going to be on standby for any time that happens. So it's really cool to just kind of have that in the pocket.
That's great.
From a design, back to kind of design, the players had a chance to test this out in 2024, give some feedback. What are some ways kind of it changed from that to the release we got?
A lot of number tweaks, honestly.
Okay.
We benefited a lot from the fact that we've worked on other games, and we already kind of had a pretty solid foundation for what we knew this game mode needed to do. It's very similar to a format we have in Marvel Crisis Protocol called Ultimate Encounters. The main shift being that in that format, it's this character is tied to this mission, and when you fight them, you do this mission. The shift that we made with Legendary Encounters was that the missions are separate from the Galactic Legend, so you can mix and match them, and it's kind of like you can get peanut butter in your jelly. And so every time that we put out a new Galactic Legend, that's going to add content to every single mission. And when we add out a mission, it's a mission for every Galactic Legend, right? So that was very exciting, and we knew that we wanted that to be in place, and we already kind of had a good idea of what our missions were going to be. But from the testing and from hearing what people had to say, it kind of gave us a better idea, because there's a thing when you're a developer and you're working on a game, is you play the game all the time and you play it in a certain way. And like, just like there is a meta in your city and there is a meta in this city, and then there's the national meta, there is also the Atomic Mass Games playtest office meta of like the 3 or 4 of us who playtest internally like every week. And like at the end of the day, like, it's scary when I bring Shakti. It's scary if Rutan has the Bad Batch. Like these are the things that we know are going to show up when when we say to you, like, just build a list that you want to play, bring it to playtest. Like, there are things that are going to show up, and they're going to be annoying because that person is good at playing them. So we had our meta, so we know like what the numbers need to be where we play. But the playtest really gave us this idea of like how other people are going to play this game. How are they going to respond to this stimulus? And like how are they going to look at this and say, this is how I should play to win. I should attack this often. I should go for objectives this often. I want to have this kind of tactic in there because everyone plays different. So having more data points about that helped us to kind of like rein in the numbers of like how many points does the Galactic Legend need to win? How many hit points should they have? Like how fast should they move? How many times should they activate? All that kind of good stuff. Because we wanted it to be in a place where we want it to be like useful that you're good at the game to win,
Right.
but you shouldn't have to be the best at the game to win as either side. Like the game should point you in the direction of what you're supposed to do. It should be fun and everyone should have a chance to win.
I can say like from our game last night, they were like, Asajj is broken. This is crazy. They ended up winning. To be very clear, it was super tight. Like I was one wound away from closing it off when they closed it off. So
Yeah.
I think it with none of us really knowing what we were doing going in, this was a new experience for all three of us, and I think it hit that note of that super tight game right off the gate. So
That's awesome.
I know we all left that with like, I want to do this more often, which is awesome. I guess kind of switching because the other thing we had that came out was the key operations are officially out, which also had some time to test within the community. Now, you mentioned that while Legendary Encounters has some clear influences from, the Ultimate encounters from Marvel Crisis Protocol, key operation was really an entirely new thing. So what about Shatterpoint pushed you in this direction for key operations?
So the thing about key operations is one of the things that people really enjoy about Star Wars, and I know it sounds really cliche, is the story, right? The hero's journey of Luke, right? The tragic story of Rogue One, right? The growth of Ahsoka Tano, right? These are all really core things that people love in the Star Wars universe. And the match play for Shatterpoint is great. Right? When you just come up and you play Shifting Priorities, it is a fantastic game, but it doesn't deliver that experience, right? And that's fine. It wasn't really supposed to.
It can have its moments for sure.
Yeah, but it wasn't there to deliver a narrative experience like down to the buckles. And that was the genesis of key operations. People want to play things that are like Scarif. People want to play things that are like the Death Star escape. And so when we developed it, that was the real goal, is can we capture the styles of these iconic Star Wars moments so that you can play them with your Shatterpoint miniatures?
Yeah, like everyone wants to tell stories with their miniatures. Like I think everyone has that impulse. If you play miniature games, you want to tell stories with your miniatures because it is a lot like, playing when you're a child and you make up stories about what's happening. And I know that I have stories about characters that I have made up in my head from countless armies across countless years. And this is a chance to do that in Star Wars. And so like a key operation might be like destroy the base. We don't want to say it's this specific base because that might pull up a picture in your head of the movie, and we want you to be able to make your story. We want you to be able to play your narrative.
Right. Yeah, I obviously part of key operations, yes, you can run a single key operation, have a ton of fun with it, but obviously that comes with campaign rules for a full or narrative experience. And there's something incredible when you hit that moment where this isn't Captain Rex on the battlefield. This is my Captain Rex in the game. So was campaign a part of key operations from the start?
It was not initially something that we made from the start, but we knew we wanted it to be. Like we knew that we would eventually have multiples of these and that we would want to tie them together to make a campaign. There's this idea in Star Wars, like the stories are never one part. Right, like it's always a series, it's a trilogy, or it's there's a bunch of episodes tied together. And so like we knew that we were going to have to take time to make these because they're each individual. And when we were creating key operations in and of itself, like there's this portion of development that is create the system by which key operations will work, and then you need to make a key operation. So that's like twice the work there. And then once that framework is laid, like on the one hand, it's great because you have a framework to work with, but on the other hand, you can't change anything anymore. So now you need to build everything inside of this framework that you've laid out. So it gives you guardrails, which is good, but it limits the creativity a little bit. like trying to find tweaks and differences. Like we knew it was going to take a while before we were going to have enough of these to make a campaign system, but that also gave us time to come up with the campaign system. And like, how do you have progression with characters when the characters are not something that you get to make up yourself? Like everyone has played a skirmish game where you get to make up your character and name them, and like,
which is a super cool thing.
This guy's fast and tough, but like in Shatterpoint, like you said, it's Captain Rex. So how do we let you make it your Captain Rex without changing the fact it's Captain Rex? And that was the question.
Is super cool to be able to do, right? I think Key Operations opens some really cool opportunities for event organizers, community leaders to run a campaign event. From your kind of envisioning, would you recommend more like a one-day event to play through a campaign, or like a multi-week league to hit the 3 games in a row over multiple weeks, or is it kind of just built for both kind of play?
Or que no los dos, right? Very specifically, when we worked on campaign for Key Operations, we wanted it to work in both methodologies. Right. We wanted it to be accessible to a person that doesn't get to play very often, but really enjoys the narrative game and would like they want to play in a league with their friends, and their Key Operation league is going to take 4 months. And we wanted that to be accessible. Right. And then we also want to be like, if you want to play this all in one day, have at it. And there's all the subtleness of those design things have to do with like how you record keep and like what you're expected to do between games and stuff like that. Because, you know, the Key Operations campaign, the bookkeeping is very light, right? And that's very on purpose, right? So that like if you're playing it all one day, you don't have to be like, all right, I gotta recalculate my entire total and then figure out the differentials and stuff, which is fine for a lot of games. Like, not saying there's anything wrong with that, but just like we wanted to like give both experiences out there, right? Like if you want to make a one-day event where you're like, we're going to play all the Key Operations in a row, see who wins. Like that's a great Saturday, right?
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I think this question comes up a lot, and I think it really comes down to like know your community. If you're the person that runs the events in your area, and you know that people really love to grind out games and they really only get a chance to on the weekend, like y'all are weekend warriors, one day event is perfect. But if you're a game club that meets on like Wednesday nights after everyone's been to work, and you know that like this person shows up at 7:30 and this person can't get there till 8, we're going to be lucky if we get one game in, you probably shouldn't do a one-day event. You should probably like roll that out over several weeks and talk to the people that you're playing with, right? So like communities vary just as much as our plans. So we try to make things, like Rutan said, that are accessible for anyone, and we trust that people are going to do the thing that's best for their community.
Yeah, and I think it's great that it's built with both in mind, right? Because you're absolutely right. The needs of the community are kind of where that's going to land. So I love that. I think to hit on the last big point here, we saw some cool new characters coming that have been brought up a couple times already. So we have Baylan and Morgan squad packs both hitting in 2026. Both of these characters were standout characters in Ahsoka. Really, from a performance, stole the screen, stole the show. And just a shout out to the design team, absolutely brought their A game to these models. Like both absolutely stand out as incredible. I'm excited to paint both of them. Something we talk a lot on the cast is how important some of the more unique aspects of Shatterpoint are to, well, you know, making Shatterpoint feel like Shatterpoint. And I think compared to other miniatures games, the order deck and the hunker mechanics are both very, very unique to Shatterpoint, and are very cool things for you guys to kind of be able to play around with and make something that truly feels unique on the table. Now, that is a direction you chose for both of these characters, with Morgan playing with some cool things with the order deck and Baylan using those hunker tokens in some unique ways. What kind of pushed you in the direction for these specific mechanics for these characters?
Well, I mean, every time that you're making a primary, you want to look at how they impact a game and what it is that they touch, right? Like if you're bringing this character, what are they giving you? These designs came down, and I got to talk to Schick about them. Morgan Elsbeth has that very like witch magic feel, and it just felt like she should have some control over the order deck, some divination, some soothsaying kind of feel. It just felt appropriate as being one of the core mechanics of the game that she could manipulate. And then as far as Baylan and the hunkers, like Baylan's Skoll, there is a very specific feel to that character when you see him come on the screen and when he speaks. And dare I say, for me, it feels a lot like an Obi-Wan Kenobi type. You know, it is this kind of grizzled master that's seen some things, and they have been changed by the world that they live in, but he still stands by his ideals. And I think there's a lot of similarities in those characters and in like their they're holding to their ideals, and they're being strong in their conviction. And I think that is kind of where that tie to the hunker happens. And it just felt right for the character, which is such a ephemeral kind of cop out answer. But like when you're making the design, you know, it's got to touch some piece of the game, and what feels right from a psychological perspective. Like, I play with this part of the game. Oh, that feels neat. That feels like that character is a very valid reason to do it. And that's usually where this stuff comes from.
Yeah, I think they both landed, and I really like that idea that Baylan's taking some close to Jedi mechanics, but then twisting them in his own way. And I think that thematically lands in a really cool spot. So touching on another commonality between Morgan and Baylan, they both have very powerful identity abilities that notably are not restricted by any keywords or tags. What are some decision points that go into, you know, when building a primary on, do we add some tag limitations here, or do we keep more open list building choices?
So a big chunk of that is theme, right? We want characters to be their fantasy, and particularly for Baylan, right? He's a mercenary, right? He's like, pay me, right? I have my own agendas. I'm not interested in the troubles between the New Republic and the Empire. I have my own agenda, right? And so with him, it was very natural to be like, well, he's not going to have tag synergy because he's not that guy. He doesn't play for anybody, right? And then what we did is we thought, like, we got his design and we're like, well, what if he interacted with people but had like a different resource, right? It wasn't that he synergized with their tag, he synergized with something that they did that was like the same as him, right? Which really played into that hunker mechanic. But for the most part, it has to do with, is the character a mercenary? Is the character the general of the Galactic Republic? And they should be a Galactic Republic person, right? And sometimes we can get like a little cheeky with like the aquatic tag and Nosseri and Kit Fisto, right? And sometimes we can get a little sneaky with run-in scoundrels with Hondo and Boosh and Lando and R2, but for the most part, the tagging frequently has to do with like what makes sense for them thematically.
Yeah, and the second piece of it, like the theme is the first question, right? Like we can't do anything that's against what Star Wars is. You can't make something what it isn't, of course. But then we also ask our question, like, is this something from a new era? Is this something that is going to exist for a while before the other things that go along with it are going to come out? You know, like, how long does this need to exist in this space before like the rest of what you would naturally, if you're playing like a thematic list, want to run with is there? Like that's a question. So those things you want to leave them a little bit more open so that people that love those characters can fit them into their squads immediately and play them and enjoy them. And then as more stuff comes out later, maybe those things are gonna tie a little more tightly, but make sure that they mesh well, if not through tag synergy, but just through what they do. Like they're a natural fit for this thing that came out before that doesn't need a bunch of tag synergy, so it naturally works with them, but you're going to like them together anyway, right? So there is a piece of that which is very, very hard geometry to do, but important.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. You know, I think looking back through some Shatterpoint history, I imagine similar decisions were made with like Jedi Hunter Vader at the time he came out. That can't be Empire because we didn't have Empire models at the time, right? So I think that makes sense. I think given the timeline of Ahsoka, this is going to be New Republic era, and we don't know what else, but I think based on moment in time, that makes sense, and I'm going to make that assumption. But there is a limited amount available in that era, so these are kind of going to be with their boxes at least, so this opens up some cool options for the other side of the squad to kind of fit different thematic squads and different, you know, combinations with these abilities. Because I can tell you, since you guys have shared this in Ministravaganza, I have built so many lists on how do we take advantage of Morgan, how do we take advantage of Baylan. And I'm super excited about it, with especially these identity abilities. Now, during the stream, Morgan was cut off a little bit at the bottom by Enoch, and I want you to know that's my least favorite thing about Enoch at this point.
We were on, I think it was Bashuda yesterday, 2 days ago, and I did say there that Morgan Elsbeth has Galactic Empire. and Night Sister and Dathomirian. I don't remember if there's anything else there, but I could say with like 99% certainty that those three are there. I did not go check.
Oh,
but
and here
like,
I am a little more curious because it does this thing where it says when this character is wounded, and then what does that do? I guess we'll find out.
That one
I
you'll have to
mean,
find out.
I imagine something happens when they're wounded.
Yes, I do imagine that. And we have a lot of examples of many things that could be. So definitely excited to see kind of that final piece of Morgan, and just I think I'm so excited. I know we've brought it up a couple of times. General Kenobi is a favorite of mine, and a lot of that is just a big part of that is the ability to keep the hunker tokens well engaged. And I really like this idea of creating really defensive characters.
Baylan spends those tokens for offense.
He does, but you still get more defense dice, and I'm on board. But I think it creates a good combo. So obviously, I think there's a couple obvious pairings. We've mentioned Kenobi, and that you guys had to test this. I imagine the Mandalorian was up there with some shared scoundrel tags and being able to share those around. Is there any other pairing you tested with Baylan that stood out?
A while ago, I'm trying to remember.
Fair enough.
It was a hot minute. I mean, like,
I can't give you the thing I always like to test with scoundrels, which is Hondo.
I love it.
Hondo's active ability is so powerful, right? You point at Baylan, you point at Hondo, and they both get to move on Hondo's turn, and he gives you all that force. And Baylan has a lot of expensive abilities on his card, right? He has a lot of things he can spend force on. Those sound like peanut butter jelly to me.
Hondo is my second most played primary outside of Obi-Wan. I am very on board.
I'm gonna sound like big CIS trying to sell more Asajj, but I really like Baylan with Asajj. Because Asajj gets where she wants to go, and then Baylan just gives a little more oomph to everyone on the table.
Also, Asajj's expertise tables are quite good. After
I'm pretty sure that's in the game.
Yeah, they're really good.
She is extremely consistent. Yes.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I'm still touching on Morgan a little bit. So Morgan Squad Pack hits some really interesting tags. Some that, needed some love. We got Night Sister. We're introducing Night Trooper, Galactic Empire. We've got Stormtrooper. We've got likely Dathomirian. You mentioned Dathomirian on Morgan. This is going to open up some really cool options. Given the moment in time this box is capturing, was ensuring this box could pair well with Thrawn a factor in development?
So when we worked on this box, it was that it paired well with Empire, right?
Okay.
And pairing well with Empire pairs
means
well with Thrawn.
Yes.
Right? And you'll notice that the Night Troopers in specifically lean into they like Stormtrooper friends, right?
Yes.
And they can do some very powerful things when they have Stormtrooper friends. And by doing that, we brought it all together, right? You can play Morgan. She lets the Night Troopers come back from the dead, right? The Night Troopers then other Stormtroopers. Well, now I'm running all Stormtroopers, so that other primary is who's good with Stormtroopers? And there are a variety of Empire characters that are fantastic.
Yeah, in this specific instance, I think we really lucked out because the design on Thrawn is such that he is meant to be kind of good agnostic of whatever you bring with him. Yeah. Because his unit card itself is very selfish, except for the piece about putting units in reserve, which is also selfish because it lets him hold on to the Force, which is going to power everything else. So none of it is really direct support, I would say, and all the rest of that comes in the tactic cards that are in the deck, and those have so much impact just on General Galactic Empire, anything that you have, he can do something with anything. So making Morgan work with Thrawn just meant making Morgan work.
Right. No, that makes sense. There's so many things that I hit as the Night Troopers look like a perfect support for Thrawn, right? The battle tactics are moving stuff around all the time, which is amazing. I'm moving around this body that's never going to go down, which is great. And moving them around so much means I can make sure that they're within that primary range and within that to stay up, right? So I think there's so much there that connects. And I know we are all very excited to get this stuff on the table. Speaking of the Night Troopers, Animated Beyond Death and Undying Loyalty on the Night Troopers are incredibly unique from what we've seen from Shatterpoint so far and capture well in an Undying unit. Animated Beyond Death has those restrictions, though, of, hey, you need to be within 5 of a Night Sister primary, which, you immediately think, oh, okay, do I want Mother Talzin on the other side? But then you also need these Stormtrooper units for when they're becoming wounded. which leans more towards that Empire Stormtrooper squad. Is this all a thematic piece, or is this, part of the balancing act for an ability that looks exceptionally powerful?
Well, I mean, you can't do witch magic without a witch. That's kind of
It's just
important.
match, right?
So luckily, again, we once again kind of lucked out in that it's both, right? Like these abilities are outrageous. They're wild. They're really cool, and you really get the feeling of these like uncaring bodies that are just throwing themselves at you. But that's also terrifying from a game design perspective and from a game balance perspective. So we had to put some rails on it.
Yeah, it was quite easily the most tested ability in that when we were working on that.
I can imagine.
It existed in a variety of different ways. We did it like 85,000 different ways. We did all sorts of stuff. And the outcome was from just, quite honestly, quite a bit of playtesting, right? Like most things are like super theme first. That's what we wanted. This one kind of worked out that we were able to make the restrictions to keep the ability from being either totally not good or wildly too good. We got to do both, but that's because we kept it in mind, right? But it easily in the wave of things was the most tested thing.
Yeah, I would say like if you were to ask what ability did you rewrite the most times over the course of Shatterpoint?
It was no spite with a bullet.
It's this one. And like the number of times that I was like, how does this work? And then Rutan would be like, Rutan is a wizard with a timing chart. I will give him that. And it's one of my favorite things about working with Rutan is he, like, once he knows how something works, he does not forget how it works, and he will be the first person to be like, oh, that doesn't work because of XYZ. So I would like rewrite the ability and I'd send it out. What would really happen is it would be in playtest and Rutan would be like, oh, there's a problem with this. And I'd be like, don't worry, I can fix it. Haha. And I would rewrite the thing and I'd send it to him. He'd be like, no, this breaks here. And I'd be like, oh, okay, great. Well, we'll change this. He'd be like, no, it breaks here. I'm like, okay, fine. Well, we'll fix it here. He's like, well, that works, but it's kind of weird with X, Y, and Z. And I'd be like, all right, fine. I'll rewrite it again tomorrow. And it would go on like that for like 3 days. And like playtest, the update would be supposed to be here. And like we'd have to rewrite it enough times it would be a day late. Like this thing was really hard to get to work, but in the end it was worth it because it is super cool.
Yeah, it's so thematic. It's like the moment that like, oh no, it's like from the show, they get back up and you're like, oh no, right? We had to watch, I watched that set of scenes so many times to like, do they shoot their blasters? Do they punch? How do they get up, right? Like we got real deep with getting those mechanics to come clean.
I think that's super exciting. Like it's unique abilities like this that I think make the list brewers just get really excited, right? I look at some of the abilities we have through the game, and yeah, there's characters that are really good. They're really good at killing stuff. There's characters really good at moving really fast. And that stuff is super cool to see. But when you get like an ability, like I'm going to go back to Kenobi again, where that identity is just something super unique in the game that doesn't exist. No one else can do this thing that this character can do. And I think as a support unit, these guys are absolutely hitting that note of doing something just incredibly unique. Honestly, I would love to see something like this from a droid perspective. I think would be super cool. And it shows that you can get further into a game and start to expect this is what characters look like, this is what a unit looks like, and then it's things like this that just turn that on its head and say, oh, we have not seen everything yet, which again I think is just what makes reveals like Ministravaganza really exciting, right? To see new mechanics. I think I had a similar moment the first time when you guys revealed what the armorer does, of okay, we're breaking the wound mechanic right out the window, and I think it turned out great. I think Mandalorians have become my recommendation for where someone should start playing Shatterpoint, because I think it is just a great introductory squad. They all kind of do a very consistent thing, and it's simple, kind of an elegant way. And it just, we talk a lot of where people should start, and it ends up there.
They're also cool as hell.
They're cool as hell.
Paz Vizsla with the gun just wrecking shop, right? That miniature is fantastic.
He does his job real well. Awesome. So moving on. So obviously Ministravaganza involves other games as well, specifically MCP and Legion. We saw a really cool moment from Marvel Crisis Protocol with you guys made some core rule changes to a few different mechanics that have been there since kind of the beginning of the game, of how priority and mission selection work. What are some factors that brought you to looking at and changing core rules?
So Schick talks about this a lot. A game is a lot like a garden, and the garden is full of many different plants, and those plants, they grow and they have their seasons, they come and they go, and you need to watch over them and care for them and prune them and make sure that everything is growing well. And sometimes weeds get in and you need to remove the weeds. And there are things in games that are weeds, and like things like emerging play patterns where that were not initially intended, but like as a game grows, as you continue to put something into these games, I was talking about how a board game is like, this is the board game, this is the
Yes.
expansion,
Yeah.
this is the whole game. And our game is like, this is Shatterpoint. Here's this expansion. Here's this expansion. Here's this expansion for like the next 3, 4, 5, however many years, right? Like you eventually get to a point where like there's so much stuff. And the fact of the matter is that like combinations exist that have come into play that fundamentally changed the way that the game is played from where it began, from what you could do when there were miniatures in the game. Now there's 200 miniatures in the game, and the way that they
Right.
combine makes all these things happen. And we found this thing that we can do that is not necessarily in the spirit of how the game was originally intended, or it skews things in such a way that you need to play in this specific way in order to win. And that's a point at which we look at the game and we say, okay, well, this isn't necessarily what we wanted. So should we be changing the units? Are those designs bad? Do we want to change the way that these things play? Or should we make a shift to a fundamental core mechanic? What is the problem here? Is the problem that this design is restricted by this rule, or is it the other way around? Like there's so many questions about like what's the best way to do this. And usually the answer is what creates the least touches. And like
Right.
I said, like you get to the point where there's so much stuff in the game, and you know, do you need to pinpoint every single thing that causes this issue to happen, or do you just fix the issue? So like what's the symptom? What's the core problem? And a lot of the times, like when you get to several years into the game, you look at the core rules and you say like, well, if we change this, it gets a little closer to what we wanted to do without having to change like 35 unit cards. And it's just a better, simpler way to make the game work, to do the thing that we want it to do. And we can still make these kinds of designs for characters that people enjoy playing, and have it not fundamentally change the way that the game works. Making a core change is a big decision, because the other piece of these games of tabletop games, what we call lifestyle games, is like you learn how to play them, and then you know how to play them for the lifetime of the game is the idea. And like
Right.
when these core changes happen, you need to relearn something, and that can be really hard. We were talking about like we have version fatigue. Well, players will also get it because they remember how this works when they learned how to play it, and they've been playing for 5 years, and then we change something.
100%.
Like that's a complete shift in how you play. So we need to be really careful about changing core mechanics, but we like to be brave about it and bold about it, and we will do it when we need to, but it's something that we don't approach lightly.
I think it's a balance, right? As all things are. I think it's really cool that this is kind of a lever that you guys can pull if you think it's appropriate. And I think I'd be really cool to see what that looks like if ever happens in 2029 for the first Shatterpoint core rule change. Whatever that looks like. But I think it gives a thing of, oh, this thing that I always think is certain doesn't always have to be certain. And I think there's for me, there's something really exciting about that, but it falls into that same area of balance changes. You want that familiarity with the game. You want be able to, hey, I've played this squad before, I can put it down and I know exactly what it does. And there's something nice about that. But also I don't think I've heard much negativity of any kind of the 2020, of the May update of any kind, right? Because I think there was a ton to be excited for, and I know that is a ton of work from your guys' perspective. And on that note of a ton of work, is that obviously there's no chance that you're never going to adjust the game again. That's obviously not reality in this day and age, but is that something, can we expect that annually, every couple years? Is that just kind of when the right moment kind of hits?
It's mostly when the right moment kind of hits. We have quite a busy schedule of products that we work on, things that we're working on, looking back at things, making sure organized play is correct, all sorts of stuff, right?
Right.
It's pretty robust. And we do it when we can, right? Like
Right.
if we have an opportunity in the schedule and it makes sense for us to do it with the context of everything that's going on, I'll work on miniatures and tinker with them for the rest of my life, man. Right? Like I'll give you an update every month if I could, but my boss would not like that at all. But so like it's a balance. We have a lot of new content's got to be made, right? We've got to do organized play, we have to do retailer support, we have all sorts of stuff. So it's like when we can, and that was the thing with the 2025 update, we had the opportunity to do so. And we actually got
Right.
very fortunate that we had a pretty nice lead time, which is one of the reasons why I think it was so good, is
Yeah.
that we worked on that for a very long time. And frequently that was just fortune and like working out and things kind of going our way.
And that first one was, I would say it was at least moderately planned. Like we kind of knew that around the 2 year
Yeah.
point we were going to want to do this because we did have the experience from other games that we've made and like knowing the cadence at which this kind of thing needs to happen. Because like you don't want to do it too fast because you have to let things shakes out. You've got to let people like play it and figure it out and do the thing. And then you want to like have a good basis, like there's enough stuff in the game that now we feel comfortable making changes. And then like Rutan said, from here on out it's kind of as needed, and we don't want to put it on a specific cadence, mostly because we don't want to say like you're going to get this every 6 months and then you don't get it every 6 months and then all of a sudden we're liars. Like that's a terrible thing for us. And also
people,
like
yes.
our hope every time we do this is that we nailed it 100% perfect, never need to touch it again, we're on it. Like that's the goal. That's the way that hopefully we go into this every time is we're gonna fix all the problems and then the game will be perfect and then moving forward will be good. That is never going to happen. That's not realistic, but that is always the goal. So like when we see a hole in the schedule, when we see time that we can go in and touch this stuff, and we look back and we're like, we didn't just do this, we'll go ahead and do that. And like I can say we're working on one right now. We have the next balance update for Shatterpoint is in playtest. We're working on it currently. I don't know when it's going to come out. I can't say that for sure, but we are working on it, and they will be. I wouldn't say they'll be frequent, but they will happen when they are necessary. We are watching the game.
I think that's promising. And I think a lot of people are going to be excited to hear that, not to address the Cassian in the room.
The thing I wanted to mention about that also is it's like the Anakin thing too. Time also has to transpire, right? The 100%. Game is always changing, right? When Anakin came out, everybody, we were like, did we screw up? Right? We don't think we did, but no, I'm scared.
But they think we did.
I wasn't expecting this. And then it worked out to be fine, right? Like it worked out to be fine once the meta adjusted. So the timing is also like very sophisticated because sometimes it just takes, sometimes something is good, but people don't realize it. And then somebody puts the puzzle pieces together and it becomes a perennial all-star. And everybody's like, I never thought this wasn't good, right? And the reverse happens.
Right.
A perfect example is like everybody thought the CIS secondaries, rather the Separatist Alliance secondaries, were very, very powerful when the game came out. And now they're fine. Right, they're fine. Right, originally everybody's like, "Oh my god, these guys are absurd," and now they're totally fine. Right,
I think that's actually an incredible call out. If you guys jumped at everything the community said, Talzin and Dooku would be nerfed right now, and that clearly was not needed in the long term of the game. In fact, I'd like some other things, but no, I think that is an incredible call out. Right, we see the game settle and evolve. Even just looking at early Shatterpoint, I heard a lot as people were playing their first games or their first event of like, I lost because of a bad order deck. I wasn't able to get this game because the order deck didn't go my way. And I think as a community, as everyone kind of evolved and just started learning how the order deck works, when to reserve, when not, people realize that, hey, this is a pretty controllable thing, that maybe it's a list building problem. Maybe it's a decision-making problem and not just this isolated order deck thing. So to your point, it takes some time for the community to figure out both how to play things and how to play against things. And you don't want to be too like knee-jerk reactive, right?
100%.
Well, that is super exciting. I think the last thing we saw for Shatterpoint at Ministrav was absolutely a new era coming into the game, which I think is going to be super exciting for a lot of people. I've heard you guys talk a couple times on a couple of the other interviews that that era is a lot of people's first Star Wars. Like for me, the prequel era was my first Star Wars, and it is near and dear to me in every place in my heart because that was the first thing I saw in theaters. As is there another generation of Star Wars fans that are, quite frankly, getting to the age where they have adult money and can give you that adult money. And I think just hitting that point that Shatterpoint needs to be for everybody, right? And I think it's super exciting to dive into that era, to new characters. Kylo's obviously a favorite. We saw a ton of cool models coming from that. I'm excited to see Kylo's. One thing I wanted, the model that stood out to me was Rey. And I think of looking at the Mandalorian with Grogu on the base and thinking of the ability, like, do the magic hand thing, and just seeing this, how to include Grogu in that mini. And I'm so excited to see what Rey's card ended up look like, to see what that little roly droid's going to do as part of that, because I think BB-8's a fan favorite as well. So I guess to get to a question, out of all those models, when you first saw them, I'm sure it happens in a meeting room, you get a pretty cool PowerPoint where you see all these models. Which of them stood out to you that you were most excited to design for?
Which miniature from the
sequel era?
From the sequel era stuff? Captain Phasma.
Yeah.
Get some Quicksilver baton action. Let's go.
What a cool looking character. Yeah, absolutely. That was
from a hobby perspective, she is the one I'm most excited for.
You're super cool.
It's just really tough. Sculpting and art do such an incredible job, right? Particularly with the Baylan and Morgan.
Off the charts.
Unbelievable. Yeah. I've seen these things dozens of times. And when I saw Ministrav and I watched it and they put up the Baylan art, I was like, damn, that's so good. Right? It's just so good. Yeah. It's really tough to say. I have to cop out. I'm a whip. Plummer's better than me.
No, all good. So obviously we are all Star Wars fans here. It is very clear that your love and passion of Star Wars goes into this game, just from the way you talk about these characters and talk about how they play on the table. For those Shatterpoint players out here that, maybe started with Shatterpoint and are looking for some larger scale battles, where would you recommend someone start for getting into Legion? Obviously we're in new edition territory.
If someone wanted to start playing Star Wars Legion, the best place to start is with the new core starter boxes. Are fantastic.
Unbelievable.
Like, they've got a full 600 points that you can just pop on a table and start playing right
out of the box. A couple of people both buy one,
100%
kind of roll up. Sweet.
That particular product, in my opinion, I'm really, really, not that my opinion, I'm like lowest man on the totem pole, so don't take it this way, right? But like those products excite me, right? They are designed for players.
Yeah,
it's
100%.
600 points. You can play with it right out of the box, so you don't have to buy anything else. It comes with everything you need to play. All the miniatures in it are great in the game, are gorgeous, right? I'm going to buy a new Grievous to replace my old Grievous because I just can't get enough of the new Grievous miniature.
I can tell you I'm buying a Grievous on the bike just to paint. That is 100% happening.
Yeah.
It's a very cool miniature.
Miniature's in my other room of my house, and let's go. Excited. And when I heard from my bosses about what the plan was and what we were trying to do with those, I was excited, and then we delivered, in my opinion. Not to be arrogant or talk big, I think we delivered one of the highest quality miniature gaming starter products you could possibly get for
to be completely honest, I was at Adepticon 2025 and I walked out of that being like, oh, I want to play Legion. This looks really cool.
Yeah, the starters are really exciting, and like getting to plan a product like that and work on that piece of it with Schick and the whole team of like what's going to go in here and how much can we get in there and still hit a price point that's going to be a good place for people to start playing the game. Like, right. It was so much work across so many teams, the producers getting the quotes and the people like making the miniatures and engineering them and getting them on how many frames, and just like it is such a labor of love to get something like that to the point where these got to, and like it really is the perfect starting point. I don't think there's anywhere else that you could say to a new player like this is a better place to start than if you know what army you want to play,
right?
Grab it and go.
Well, 100%. I can say confidently I would love to see something similar for Shatterpoint someday.
The core box for Shatterpoint's not bad, my friend.
It is the place to start. It is really great. I have two of them.
I like that.
Yeah, I think we talked about it a little bit yesterday on Bushido, like all the there are different avenues, and like the Legion ones are single player starters, and what would be exciting about a single player starter for Shatterpoint and what that might look like. Those are things that we're always talking about behind the scenes. We're always talking about like what are ways that we can provide good value, and what are products that would be exciting and things that we can put together. So never say never.
I'll take that answer. And with that, I want to thank both of you so much for coming in and joining and entertaining me for the last hour. No, I really appreciate you guys taking the time. Obviously, you're doing a bit of a tour with this, but I know how much work it is on my side doing this once a week. So just thank you guys for doing this and engaging with the community. It really shows how much you guys care about the game, the community, and just making sure that players know what's going on. So thank you from behalf of myself, Titus, and Sean, and the rest of the Canadian Shatterpoint community. We really appreciate you guys coming on.
Well, thank you.
No problem. We're glad you had us.
Yeah, we're so happy to come out here, and thank you for all the work that you do with your communities and the way that you share the game and spread the word and talk about it and be excited about it. Thank you to everybody that listens to your cast for your passion for the game and for playing it. It's really a pleasure to get to work on this and see your excitement every time we show stuff. So Ministravaganza was a blast, and onward and upward,
Amazing. I think we are going to see a really exciting 2026 for Shatterpoint. Thanks again, guys.
Cheers.